CFR Network, CFR News. Good day, good night, all. Welcome back. A returning guest, my mate Josh, going global. How art thou, sir?
Hey mate, it's good to be back. Yeah, I'm decent to be honest. I'm just back from a little trip in Europe and just relaxing, getting ready for the next one. So yeah, I'm good.
Wonderful. Glad to hear. You've created so much content since the last time. You've been not around the world, I guess, but three-quarters of the way around the world and stuff. And you've been to many different places. You've even come back to England when we had the marches and stuff. So you've been very busy, Josh. Very busy.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to come back in November time. I could see that there was people really wanting some UK content. I decided I actually made the terrible decision. I thought, let me go to India. I had no reason to go to India, but I thought, let me go there, maybe get some easy views. I was like struggling at the time in Uganda. I just had, and I would have thought maybe it'd be a bit more fun content to just go around and it'd be a bit chaos. The stuff in Uganda was pretty heavy.
Yes, it was. It
So
was.
then I was like, oh, let me just try and have fun. But it was just, I mean, how many people have you seen do videos in India? And it's just, it is what it is. So I was like, right, I should have come home, but delayed it for a little bit. Then when I eventually did, my very first video was just about home.
Yeah,
It's terrible. I took it off. But then I was like, right, what am I actually wanting to do here? Then I'd done a video in Atherstone with the ball game, and I was like, right, I'm really into English culture. Maybe that's something I should bring that element back home.
it was
And
good.
then yeah, and then I started asking the first proper one where I was asking people. I went to Bradford and I was asking people, do you know that question, what it means to be British?
Mm,
It's been something I've been thinking about for quite a while as I was traveling around. I started doing a little bit of the colonial stuff. I've always been interested in the empire, so why not bring it home and ask people at home? Because it is seems to be a question that has been on people's lips a lot, especially the last year. And then I got a sense of, oh, this country is actually really divided. And obviously, we've seen that play out a little bit with the riots,
we
which
did.
personally I think is just the beginning, especially from the conversations that I had off camera and since then, and people from all different backgrounds. I don't know how it is for you, but yeah, so that was interesting. It was good fun coming back and doing some a bit more like journalism, I would say. That
Yes, and some
so
and Josh, honest journalism, especially when it came to the period when you came back. As you've touched on, that what you did was a breath of fresh air because there was so many people with hidden agendas, unfortunately. So many different hidden agendas, and they were mixing genuine concerns that so many people who have been here, maybe even only 5 years, but they're here legitimately and they're
yeah,
contributing to the society and they can see what's going on and like, wait a minute, this isn't where I came to set up and create a dynasty and a legacy and have my children be here kind of thing. And it was a trying time, very trying time. Um, and as I said, you brought some very honest media and coverage of the situation. I tried to shed a bit of light onto it as well. Um, but going back to that question, because based upon your travels and stuff, and when I started seeing the series, as I would call it, is um, what what does it mean to be British, to be English, to be an Englishman or an English woman? What does that actually mean? It's going to be very personal and different to each person, but genuinely, I guess we can all agree, well, what is a British person or an Englishman?
so I think you said it right the first time when you asked what's a British person, and then you said what's an Englishman. 'Cause I think they are distinct, and I would
Yes.
say that an Englishman, it's like saying what is a Gujarati to an Indian.
Mm,
It's an ethnic group, and that Indians don't really call themselves Indians. They're Gujaratis, and they're
mm.
going blank on the tribes because the ethnic groups because I've not been for a while and I've thought about it. But they're all these different groups, Punjabs and all these different people. Yeah, they're Indian, but really they're a Gujarati person or they're a Punjabi person or Bengali or wherever they are. The British identity. it's a bit more complicated. Obviously, you can even hear that it comes from the Brittonic people.
Indeed.
So, you know, there's no point in messing around and saying that, oh, the British people can be anyone. Like this idea now that we're supposed to be anyone can be British. We're not
Mhm.
America. That's not the way it works. That's my personal belief is it's not the way it works. If you've just come from Syria or wherever, then what is it that we have in here? And I have this really stupid example. I spoke to my mate. I watched that film about Henry V.
The latest one.
Yes, I think it's the most latest one.
Yes.
The Battle of Agincourt, when he wins that, I'm watching that and I have an emotional attachment to that.
Mm.
And I think it's a really, and it just sounds like a stupid example, but I spoke to a guy, it was actually from Manchester. So, um, but he's mixed Caribbean heritage. And I'd posted something about, I can't remember who it was, being an immigrant and commenting on something. And he said, hold on a minute, he's not an immigrant, he was born here. But then I said to him, well, what do you think about um, yourself in your British identity? What do you really feel like? And he said, yeah, I always question whether if this is really home for me. So I said, so why am I expected to wholeheartedly believe that this is your home if you don't even believe it? And I wasn't like trying to be like
Nasty.
vindictive or say or xenophobic or anything like that. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
this is the truth and we feel it. This is when it comes to being an Englishman. You feel being an Englishman. And then
Hmm.
some people say, oh, but what if they don't feel like being an Englishman? Well, when people come from abroad and they come and visit England, they know what they're looking for when they try and meet when they go to London and say, where are all the English people? They know it. Everyone subconsciously, or they really recognize it, but they don't want to say it because they don't want to be accused of one word or the other. But we all really feel and understand that there is a distinction between what's English and what's British. Just like there's a distinction between English and Scottish and English and Welsh. There is that distinction. The British identity is a bit more difficult, obviously, because of the empire.
Indeed.
So that mixes it up. But when you're, I think what's really hard as an Englishman in England is now we just had an election. How many politicians did you hear speak about the English?
Come on. Come on, Josh.
Yeah, I didn't hear one person say the English people, the need of the English people, the English community. There's every other community except from England, but the English. But we have to remember we are in England.
Indeed.
It might be the United Kingdom, but there are four countries within that, well, four nations within that one country.
Hmm.
So, these riots, but people were saying it's the far right thuggery. This is pent up frustration, and yeah, this is the low end of that conversation. Do you know
Very.
the 1 million people watching Tommy Robinson
Yeah.
on their marches on a live stream? They're not all far right folks. These are
Far
people
from
who are
it.
genuinely concerned about what's going on in the country, and the
Ex-
people from all different backgrounds. And people
Yes.
from all different backgrounds are recognizing that there is a problem going on,
Hmm.
and it's happening throughout Europe. Even when I was in Morocco, I had this conversation with a Moroccan lad, and he said, I was asking him about his identity because he grew up in Morocco, he grew up in France, but he was on holiday back in Morocco, and I spoke to him about it, and he said, anyone who's Moroccan ethnically, like of heritage, growing up in Europe, who doesn't believe they're Moroccan, they've been raised wrong.
Mm.
And I was like, this is a really fascinating point because he was really ardent about it. He
Was
made
this
the
the
point
guy with
about
his son?
no, so that was guy was on video. This was just another guy
Okay.
who like I have this conversation a lot outside of
Hmm.
the videos.
Yes.
But yeah, he was interesting as well. He said he dreamt in German, the guy from the video. He dreams in German, so he believes he's a German, but he also was like split between the two. And
Yeah.
this next video from Berlin, when I was speaking to a guy, he's Ghanaian parents, but grew up and born and raised, or even moved to Germany young,
Okay.
or was born there. I can't remember the full story. I have to watch the footage. It's been like 6 weeks since filmed it, but and he was talking about this split and how the difficulty in understanding your identity if you're growing up in one culture, whereas you're
Yeah.
totally from one, and then you go home and you're not quite there either, but you're not quite here there.
Mm.
So I really want to make this video because that conversation was so enlightening in this topic, and to hear it from a German perspective rather than an English perspective. Although German culture is going through something similar, I would say
Oh,
from
yes.
yeah. So.
Most
But anyway, that
definitely.
was a lot of waffle. But yeah,
No, 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 not waffle. Josh, it was not waffle. But it also comes down to, I mean, not also comes down to, based upon what you've said and looking at it from an individual standpoint, many people have those two different views, and there'll be other people who have, again, a slightly different twist on it. Um, I would be classed as a first generation because my mother was not born here. So I'm
hmm
first generation Caribbean or West Indian as I was younger.
yeah,
Passport was, it would say we were West Indian. Then it uh was it Black Caribbean? Then it was Black British now. That's what our new designation is.
yeah,
So for some people who are first generation, they say that they're British. They would say, yes, I'm British because I was born here. And that's where the conversation stops. And then it's, I am West Indian, Caribbean, or I'm from Antigua, or I'm from this island. That's my heritage. That's home for me.
hmm
But then you're on the other side, you'll have people who will say, I'm born here. I've lived here for 50 years. I'm
yeah,
British.
yeah.
That's, heritage wise, of course, my family comes from the Caribbean, but I'm
Yeah.
British. That's why I am. I'm nothing else.
So,
Unfortunately, continue, sorry.
sorry, mate. I just was going to say, whilst you're saying you're British, there. So do you understand the distinction that I was trying to make between an Englishman and a Britishman? You wouldn't consider yourself English, I wouldn't suppose.
It depends on the who I'm talking to.
Okay. What does that mean? 'Cause to me, it would never depend. I would always be an Englishman.
Because just based upon the spectrum of people generally, English and British is the same thing, based upon my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, so that's why I think this conversation gets a lot of confusion because I think a lot of English people don't see it as the same thing. Just
Mm,
like Scottish and British is not the same thing.
of
They're
course.
they're an element of the same thing, but they're
Yes.
not the same thing. So there is a distinction between them. Like to say you're British, well, what do you mean by being British? Because if you're Scottish and you're English, you're not the same thing. There's completely different cultures.
Mm,
People think they're the same cultures, but we're actually there is huge distinctions even in the cultural dress. And actually, the Scottish have held on to theirs much much more successfully than say the English have.
agreed. Agreed. Um, It's challenging. It's very challenging. Again, it's changing the minds. Not until of recent have people actually challenged themselves to actually really pick and look into their own identity, their English, their British identity. Like, where do I come from? Am I actually British? Or 3 generations ago, did we come over from Sweden and my name is whatever the Swedish type name is kind of thing? Um,
Mhm.
and then with everything happening with the governmental system and the shame stream media and the social programming taking place, people are really starting to, form gates and say, no, I'm proud. I'm proud of who I am. There are elements within what the empire has done, which of course we're not proud of. Of course we're not proud
Yeah.
of. But the good things that we can talk about, I'm more than happy to embrace and to celebrate.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the other things as well, which when people talk about the empire now, the reason got so interested in it, well, I grew up in a military environment, so I was obviously propagandized to believe that the empire was the greatest thing in the world. And I don't even know the school I went to was distinct from the rest of the school, so I don't even know how it was for a lot of
We
people.
were all taught that, Josh. We were all
Okay,
taught
so
that.
but it's sort of swung to the opposite in the last 20 years, that it's gone from being the greatest thing that ever happened to the world to now it's the most evil system of the world. But really, it's not like that. And it's far more nuanced than that. And people say, well, even when they ended the colonial periods, they've continued with their ties, and the only reason they got rid of slavery because it wasn't financially beneficial, and they went to these places and they stole the minerals. But look, when I was in Uganda, I'll give this one example. Or in fact, I can give two examples from when I was in Uganda of how complicated colonialism is. So one of places I went to was just by Lake Victoria,
Yes.
and the man I met there, he'd been living in a hut for 24 years, basically a mud house for 24 years because he had nothing. The land he had, he got because he converted to Islam, and they were giving out land for conversions. Okay, and this is a typical process of what happens over there, and that's the only reason he could feed his children. Fair enough, he had to make that decision. Then when his friends' daughters were turning 13, 12 to 13, they were expected to marry them off to men.
The grown
He
men.
decided to older men from within the mosque and the community. He was expected to marry his daughters. Bear in mind, this guy had three daughters who were a little bit younger. So once he's seen this was happening with his men, with his friends, he said, "No, okay, I'm going back to the church," and he left Islam. He said he never really believed anyway, but he needed land because he needed to feed his children,
Of course.
which is a reasonable, you know what I mean? But then he sees this happening, and then they tried to take the land back off him, but he managed to stand his ground and he still maintains the land. Then when he was showing me around his house, he said, "This is my bed," and it was, it's a bit of wood, basically a wooden plank, and then he's got this, and he's t telling me like when my dad, because his dad lived under the empire, when he was here, the British gave us beds, they gave us cups, we had things to eat with. He was on about cutlery, and he's like,
Cutlery.
yeah, he was like, we had blankets, we had these, we had that. He said, but when they went, we got none of this. And I was thinking, well, this guy's family is in the arse end of nowhere. What exploitation is taking place by the British here if they're giving this man a bed for him and his family, and he doesn't have to sell his children, essentially sell his children off for land so he can feed the other children. Like that's not exploitation.
No.
That's the exploitation which is happening now.
Yes.
Maybe we've replaced one with another. But to think that was in the absolute arse end of nowhere,
Mm,
man who could offer almost nothing to this great empire, but subsistence farming,
yes.
that story is not told about the empire. It's and the children went to school. That was the most important. The children were going to school
I got an
when the empire
education.
was there.
See,
Yeah,
then that's
and
the
that's not
plus.
happening now.
That's the well, things are so much different. So much different. We're talking 19th century, early 20th century. We're in 21st century now and stuff.
Mhm.
The
And
idea.
still, them children there are not being educated. They're
No.
not in school.
Mm.
And they were when the empire was there, which is, and people say, but we took the language and we got rid of the culture.
It's
Granted, that is a
it's
difficult thing to do.
and as you said, the nuance between them, because as you say, that's the pluses, but that plus came through colonialism,
Yeah.
and there
But I
was
don't honestly see colonialism as a dirty word like what people are seeing it now.
well, it's is it's history. It's what took place. It's not
It's
dirty words.
taking
It's
place right now. It always takes
yes,
place. It's
yes.
just, it's just the way it takes place changes over time.
Yes. And the verbiage changes and the ideas change and the
Yeah.
sentiments of the mainstream slash slamestream media. They either put the rose-colored lens on it or they demonize it and say this is the wickedest place, it's a dictatorship, it's a communist place, we need to destroy it, we need to bring forth democracy, Josh. That's what we need to do.
Where's that happening?
It's 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 tricky. It is so tricky. But you're right. You're absolutely right. What what has if we rewind time, let's say this wasn't happening 20 years ago, was it?
What's
The
this?
the attack on British culture or English on
I
the
think it has
Englishman.
been. I think this is a long running. It's a pretty generational thing.
Ah,
I
okay.
would say it's a multi-generational. Do you know what? You could probably go back as far as the National Front.
So we're talking 60s, 70s.
Yeah, so this is the beginning of because there was like when the Windrush generation came, when the first people came from India, the subcontinent,
Hmm.
wasn't easy for those people.
It
When
was
the
a
Irish were coming over, it
yeah.
was not very easy for those people. They were coming into this new. So this image of, say, the National Front and the BNP and um, what they call them now. What are they called? The thingy boys,
Teddy boys.
Teddy boys.
Yes.
That's sorry, mate, I've had any sleep.
Don't worry.
Teddy boys. When people think of English nationalism, that's what they think of. They think of those people, and it's sort of tied in with that far right thug idea. It's the that imagery that you get now of the fat guy with the big belly and the bald head and the made in England tattoo and the pints of lagers and they're on the dole and they're in the tracky bottoms.
Yeah.
All that is tied to the same these backwards knuckle draggers. Like, you know, this is what people, it's this imagery. Brexit, you're less intelligent if you wanted Brexit. You're xenophobic, you're racist. All this stuff ties into it. It's all part of the same breakdown of, let's say, pride in English identity or in British identity. But I will stick with the English identity. I
Yeah.
would say there was a through line amongst all of that until now.
Okay. If we stop, so if we take it in stages, we would have been the Teddy Boys first, then it would have been NF slash and then BMP kind of, would be
Yeah.
the evolution of that into the political side, et cetera, et cetera. So let's start with
Yeah.
the Teddy Boys. So are you saying that they were misunderstood and it wasn't attacking West
No, not at
Indians and
all.
oh,
Not at
okay.
all. So I'm saying that they were doing that, but the imagery now, the Teddy Boys is one I know less of. But when it comes to the BNP and the National Front,
Yes.
when when people think of English nationalism, they think of those people.
Oh, I
They think
understand.
all English. So this is what. So so I'm saying. So the attack is they're all like that.
Yes, I get it. I get it.
So that's what I was. That was the point I was trying to make. I wasn't trying to
Yes.
justify what they were doing, but it was.
No, 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 I
Now
get it.
any conversation around nationalism is it's deferred to, oh, but you're all far right folks, and that's what the new term is now, even as far as trying to push it towards terrorism. So when we were talking about colonialism before, if you look at how the way the British demonized as people when they went to other places, they were backwards,
Hmm.
they were uneducated,
Yes.
had a
They were
terrible culture,
godless. They were
they were
godless,
late,
Josh.
they were lazy, they were godless.
Hmm.
And now what do you hear about English people in Britain? From people who promote diversity. You need us for business because you guys don't work. You're
Yeah,
lazy. You're
yeah,
backwards.
yeah.
You need to get with the times. The way we do things is better. All the same things that the British were saying when they were going to other countries are now happening within England about the English people.
But can you see what's been done though? You can see what's been done because at the same time, if we look at Christianity, it's at its lowest peak ever, unfortunately. There's
Yeah,
slight revivals of it, but it's been destroyed. Christianity is the butt of everybody's joke, but when it comes to Islam,
they wouldn't
well,
dare.
we
I
can't
have
do that.
Yeah, so you have that BBC. I think he's like BBC or Channel 4 sponsored comedian. I can't think of his name. He's so it's even actually like I find his I think it's called Munya Chapa or something or Munya Chawa. He's just
I
done a
think I know
documentary
you.
on North
you
Korea,
mm,
and he does he does that. He's got a don't get me wrong, it cracks me up. I think it's excellent. That one where Stop the Boats, and I don't know if you've seen it. He's got an
no.
excellent skit about Stop the Boats, and he's got this like far right character who's doing it right. And he's done one the other day about Russell Brand turning to Christianity. And he's saying it's very convenient that it's happened when it's with these accusations. But he never made one about Andrew Tate. And Andrew Tate was the most popular person in the world. If he's trying to get on views, then that would have been perfect to do. But he's not going to do one about Islam and he's not going to mock the imaginary sky man when it comes to
Mm,
Muslims.
it's a
But
t
he has it feels like he can because Christianity is more tied to traditional British,
traditional,
traditional English identity.
exactly. Because the
And I'm not
target,
upset about it. I think it's comedy. You can do what you want, but I just it was an
mm,
interesting.
for some people, for some people, I get it. But the older and wiser you become, Joss, I think there's some limits. There should be some boundaries, you know, within comedy. And I think, well, I know at the moment there is none. There is absolutely none, apart from depending on what crowd you're in. If you're promoted and you're in that crowd, then you will stick to that agenda. And at the
Mm,
moment, the agenda is we can disrespect Christianity, we can disrespect the normal things, we can socially engineer people to say, It's a sky daddy. What are you talking about,
Yeah,
guys? There's no gods. You are the master and controller of everything. Do what you want to do. You've only got one life to live. Just consume, consume. Have all of the stuff you can have all the drugs, have all the sex. That's what's being
definitely don't have
promoted.
kids.
Yes, definitely don't
Yeah,
have no children. Don't do anything
yeah.
like that.
Don't have
Don't do
kids and
anything
celebrate in the
traditional.
street about some abortion and all this stuff. It's like,
Yes,
yeah, anything that's non-traditional.
exactly.
So it's almost like I hate saying it, the woke stuff, but it is. That's what it is. It's this
Yeah,
new ideological power, let's say, or this new ideological way of thinking. They it is almost everything that they promote is
anti-family.
antithetical to whatever happened came before. All of it.
Yes,
So you can
yes.
pick if you want to know their position, just think what was traditionally English or traditionally British 60 years ago. Okay, now you know the position of the woke on the now because it's
Yeah.
the opposite.
It's all opposite, yeah. It's not.
Yeah,
It's a
it's like
bizarro world. It's an
yeah,
absolute bizarro world. They've destroyed so many communities, so many traditional communities who grew up under Christian values, having two parents and looking after your children and fearing God and presenting yourself well and looking after your property, not littering, Josh. Do you remember the campaigns when we were growing up? Don't
but no,
litter.
so even them, you could even say that they're separated from tradition. They're from separated from Christian values. They don't necessarily have to be Christian, but they were certainly English values or British values. They're not so much
Mm,
anymore.
no.
But do you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
not now. You
No.
can happily walk around and see someone who's claiming to be British or English. You see it in every community, throwing shit all over the floor. I mean, Birmingham's a great example of it. Like,
Mm,
that's sorry to say, it's filthy. Like
yeah.
and you know that the pride of whatever it is that they've got is not in outside of their house and their lawns. I did a video straight outside my in my hometown, so it's not just Birmingham. And I was asking people, why is these lawns like? Follow the Lord. I was doing it deliberately then on purpose. So, but why are their front gardens not looked after? And they're saying the council has to come out and do it. So I think, what do you mean the council has to come out and do your own grass?
Yeah.
You don't have to throw your rubbish in there. Maybe it's an old woman, or why is the neighbour not helping? Whereas
Come
it was
on.
different if it was like my grandparents' generation for for sure. It was a completely different world. But the world has turned.
Completely, Josh. They would come out with the brush and the bleach
Mm.
and scrub that doorstep